regards to ethical considerations, when implementing AI, are there any tools that come to mind as far as, things we can use to help leverage that and to help with the risk? Anything that comes to mind when it comes to within an organization, any tools specifically to help with that?
I don't think there's one tool that's going to help you identify unethical practices or things within a different tool that you're using, right? So whatever tool you decide to adopt for whatever purpose or process within your organization, you're going to have to practice, like put it in a test environment, run some use case scenarios through that tool to see if you're getting the results that you expect to get. And if those results start to be skewed one way or another, and that's unfavorable to anybody, then that's where you start to correct and modify your use or the way it's consuming the data or the algorithm it's using to produce the outputs, right? And so from a cybersecurity perspective, we can use some security awareness tools to help process the data faster or read through logs faster to identify any anomalies or anything that's out of place or that might not be, that's unexpected, right? That might be just a little bit out of sync. So those things would be behind the scenes and would be, not normal for an everyday user. Those would be for your security operations teams and things like that to leverage. But for the everyday business person, you're going to leverage something like a package from Microsoft. If you have a Microsoft environment, you will leverage the Microsoft Defender package and those things that they use for Outlook and for, their Azure instance and things like that in your Windows environments. But there's not going to be one tool that's going to do the thing. You're going to have to use a combination of tools. But again, you're going to, as a business owner, have to monitor the output that you're receiving from any type of generative tool or large language model to see if you're getting the desired results that you expect.
That makes sense. Yeah. So, speaking of Microsoft, Lori, do you have anything to add? Since you're a little bit closer to the Microsoft environment.
Yeah. So this is actually my job, supporting people in creating AI readiness. So I want to draw a bright line between ethics and security, and I want to talk about both of those things. So when we're talking about should we, right? That's the ethics. Should we, right? And that comes back to written policy. Acceptable use policy is where I would start with that, and that's going to be so when you're so full disclosure, I work in the largest banks in the world, so I'm not as suited to small business. But what I will say is this: your number one role as a business owner is to decide what we are going to use AI for, and the next piece of that is, what am I going to let my data be processed by? What do I want to create with this? And how much of my data am I going to send out there? So in the bigger organizations, they'll have a whole data ethics office to decide this. And when you're in a smaller organization, that's you, pal, that's your new hat. And so what I'll say is that can only be decided by a person and depends upon where you want to take your business, what you want to engage with AI with, and where you want to put your data into these services. And then we're going to switch out of ethics into security. So once you know what you want to do and what data you want to let it have, now you have to enforce that with technology. And so this is where Microsoft Purview comes into play for organizations large and small. I would say this: what's really important is to know what your data is, know how you're protecting it. Because if I think about the biggest security risk with all of this AI, it's that your data will be walking right out of your firm because somebody puts it into Bob's AI. We do have fancy detective AI, right, which will classify your data in conjunction with what you want to label it as, right? So we've got that stuff. I'm gonna pop my LinkedIn in the chat, but when we're done, and you can reach out to me and I'll send you just 4 slides that we use to talk to CIOs about this. But I guess my point is figure out what you want to use it for, and then figure out how you're going to protect your data so that it's not walking out into the cloud or into some robot's own little home, and who knows what they're doing with it, right? So as you have your acceptable use policy, read the fine print on the AI services that you're using, because that's really important too.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori, for that. Jason, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think in evaluating, I know that talking to the vendors who you're procuring your products from is a really important step to actually have them tell you what their models are good at, where do they fall short, where are they biased. All models are biased. They're trained on human data. And then you have to educate your people that that bias is inherent in there so that they can look out for it and course correct the AI when it's not quite using data properly or comes out with some skewed information. The other thing I've been doing lately is if you have a decent Macintosh laptop, a Mac laptop, or a PC, you can run a model like Llama 3 locally. And it does require a GPU and a Windows machine, and it requires so if you have a gaming laptop, those will work. And I've been doing that a lot, and it's nice to sort of be relieved that I'm not putting my data anywhere. I don't have to scrub stuff first. I can just, use it, interact with it in those cases, and I feel more comfortable doing it because I know I'm not going to get into trouble sending data out of the boundary for a customer or for my personal life or whatever. So yeah, I think talking to your vendors, understanding their security posture policy. Do they have model cards, they call them, and those give you information on what the model data it's been trained on, what tasks it's good at. Just because a model is good at one particular task does not mean it's now broadly used for all tasks. And so you kind of have to know the scope with which you can use it, the data you can put in it. And then for those situations where you can, running a local model actually is not infeasible these days. Slightly technical know-how, you might have to call in some help from a consultant or IT person at your company, but it is doable, and it's possible to deploy those open source ones locally as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I see that there in the chat, Lori mentions, one question for all vendors. Will you use my data to train your models? And I'm sure that's a big concern, right? For a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
Microsoft will never use your data to train their models, which I think is one of our big calls to action. So I think knowing, what are the top 3 things we want to ask a vendor when I'm starting to talk with them, or maybe you're not even, maybe you're just Googling for what, I was looking for an AI that would help me create pictures for a presentation I was looking at, and just glance at the terms of service, and my questions are, will this service use my data to train their models? Second question is, what are the rights to the generated, like whatever I generate, do I own it? Do you own it? And third, can I use this? Like, what are my usage allowances for this stuff? So if I use my data in your app, are you going to take it? And do I own the thing that's generated, right? Like, so those are really important questions, especially if you're generating something to use on Instagram for a brand, like you're making an offer for your business, right? Is that image yours? Is that image theirs? And can they come after you for licensing fees? So
especially if you are a small business and in the nonprofit sector and you are going for grants and government funding and things like that. And if you're working with any type of government entity, whether it's local or federal, you really must be cautious and make sure you have a legal friend or an attorney review those terms of services and those data rights and data usage and data ownership rights of things that if you're going to be performing a service on behalf of a government entity and you're using AI technology, that is just going to be a wonderful conundrum of legalese that you will get to wade through. But just be aware of that if that is how you're operating your business, or if that's the space that you're playing in.
Really great point. Yeah. And I'm sure that's probably, it's not just nonprofits and small businesses. It probably pertains to any business, really, especially even the larger you are. There's all those layers and challenges as well. So thank you for that.